I've now finished 32 books so far in 2024 and 6 last month. Ever since I started counting way back in 2014, I've read 1,282, which is definitely a vanity metric. It doesn't necessarily mean anything. I find it motivating to keep track personally, and I like being able to look back over my list and seeing which book I read during what year. But not everybody has to track. I just like doing it. But let's not waste any time. Let's just get right into the books. And the first one is Nine Figure Mindset by Brandon Dawson. And I had no idea who this guy was going into it. I saw it on Amazon, I think. Literally, just what stood out to me were the bold letters, nine figure mindset. And I'm constantly trying to surround myself with people who think bigger than I do. So, nine figure mindset just stood right out to me. And he's a legit nine figure entrepreneur, too. It's not just like a catchy title. He sold one of his first companies for $151 million. And then he built up another one with Grant Cardone, another author that I like. I like his books, but his delivery is not for everybody. I don't mind it personally. But anyway, so they teamed up, he and this guy, Brandon Dawson, to create this other company. And he built it up to like a $500 million valuation in just a few short years, basically. And then he turns around and writes this, this pretty damn good book, Nine Figure Mindset. And it's more for experienced business owners. Like, it's not like, I think the title even says, or the subtitle says something like from 0 to 9 figures or something. It's not exactly from 0, but I mean, like, that's one of like the only, partial half criticisms that I have about the book. Like, it's exceptionally useful for most business owners, even if you're not like super far ahead. If you're just kind of in like still inside year 1, year 2, you kind of just want to map out the path ahead a little bit. This is one of like the best books that you can read. The next book is, it's going to sound so stupid when I say it out loud. It's called Jonathan Livingston Seagull, which is about a seagull named Jonathan Livingston Seagull. I know, but I still stand behind this book like 100%. It was one of like the best books that I've read so far this year, and I've read some spectacular books so far in 2024. Basic storyline, I'm not going to give too much away, but it's about this seagull who falls in love with flying and the sense of freedom that comes with it, and he clashes with his group who kind of have this sort of parochial, old-fashioned, I guess whatever seagulls consider old-fashioned sense of like what flying should be. They think it's this utilitarian thing, like you fly to get food and then you sort of go from one place to another, but it's not something that you enjoy or try to get better at, or perfect or reach some sort of transcendence by doing whatever the seagull version of transcendence is. But that's basically what this Jonathan Livingston Seagull was all about. I guess what I'm trying to say is that there are layers to this book, and you can read it in several different ways. Like, it's definitely like a children's story. I mean, you can read it to your kid. They wouldn't understand like the deeper meanings to it. You could definitely read it along with some sort of like religious or like spiritual like study group. Like, there's definitely aspects of that to it. Like, there's definitely layers to this book. And one of the, I think this was in the introduction or the forward or something. They were trying to figure out where to put this book, and it ended up selling millions of copies. I think I'm almost certain that's in the millions of copies. And they're like, well, is it a children's book? Do we put it in philosophy? Like, where does this book belong? And one woman was like, well, just put it next to the cash register. And it just flew off the shelves. Okay, no seagull related intended. Anyways, moving on. And the next book on the list is The Ultimate Sales Letter by Dan Kennedy. And so I've been binging Dan Kennedy's books this past year or so. I think I've read one of them maybe a few years ago, but in the last 12 months, I've read like 8. And this one isn't my absolute favorite. Absolute favorites from him would be No BS Time Management for Entrepreneurs and No BS Marketing to the Affluent. I loved both of those books. And that's like a series of books that he has. So like, it's No BS something something. There are tons of just excellent books in that series, and I cannot recommend Dan Kennedy's books highly enough. It's just phenomenal. Like, okay, so for example, Marketing to the Affluent, I took 15 pages of notes from this book, and I use it every single day in my business. And just like everything, I use the time management book every single day. Things that I've learned in that. And the ultimate sales letter is how to write a sales letter, obviously. But it's something that I will absolutely use because I run a business. I need to generate sales, and how do you do that? You drive traffic. You drive potential customers to a sales page that they read. And so the ultimate sales letter is about how to write one most effectively. And it's just a fantastic book. it's not long, but it covers like every single thing that you need to know about how to write a profit generating sales letter. And Dan Kennedy's just one of like the best just in business. Like just he's been around for 30, 40 years. Just at the absolute top. People pay him like millions of dollars to just write their sales letters for him, and and he then takes like a cut of the revenue that's generated from it. So like most people can't even afford to hire him to work on their sales letter, but the next best thing is to just read this book. And then the only physical book that I read last month, or the only physical book that I finished last month, is this one. It's called Burn the Boats by Matt Higgins, and it's just another just phenomenal book. And so he sent it to me, and I read it. I didn't know a whole lot about it going into it. I know vaguely who he was. He was a shark or a dragon. One of those, I don't know, some investing animal. Basically a professional investor, but he's so much more than that, and his origin story is just absolutely wild. And just what he came from, and to like where he got to. Just the life arc of this guy was pretty wild. I mean, the highs are just exceptionally high. Like he's done some like incredibly impressive things, but then the lows were just devastating. And like man, it's just I don't want to tell you too much about the story. It's just there's so much. I think it's much more powerful coming from him. So like I'm saying, like just definitely read the book. Like it's absolutely phenomenal. It's definitely a book that'll stay with you, and especially if you're one of those people who you think you might be ready to just make a big leap forward in your life and make a decision to not turn back no matter what. And like that's what burn the boats basically means, right? This is just a personal preference, but I don't tend to use the word dream. I call like what I have a vision for my life, how I want my life to turn out, what I like, where I'm headed, where I want to get to. And so if you're ready to like sort of give up everything for your dream or your vision, whatever you want to call it, this is absolutely 100%, 1000% a book that you absolutely need to read. The next book that I read, again on my phone, it was The Trial by Franz Kafka. And I might overshare on this one a little bit. You might get a little bit more of a personal story from me than I maybe intended to share here. But The Trial is about this guy, Joseph K. Mind you, this is an unfinished novel from like 1914. So Kafka never actually finished this thing. There were parts of at least one chapter that ends with like a note from the editor saying that like this chapter remains unfinished. So it's not a complete book, except it does have an ending. That doesn't make any sense. But neither does The Trial. It's so messed up. But the basic premise is that this guy, Joseph K., is arrested or charged with a crime and arrested one day on his 30th birthday. And nobody tells him what it is that he's been charged with or like the nature of the crime. And he just told one day that he's been arrested and now, his whole life is kind of upended. And it's this sort of labyrinthine. I think that's the first time I've used the word labyrinthine uh, on this channel. So anyway, there's lots in this book that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and you can read it in several different ways. You can read it as like an existentialist novel, or like a parable of some sort, or like a warning against totalitarianism. Like all these different interpretations. So it doesn't like easily lend itself to one thing. Like this is what it's about. Like this is what happens, which you'll find is like one of what a lot of the classic books have in common. Like there's no one way to take it, and it does not make a whole lot of sense. And I guess where the oversharing comes in here, and I mean, why not? Enough people already know about this. Anyway, so I was charged with a crime myself this past year, and I didn't, do anything. I mean, of course, that's what they all say. Everything was dropped a few days ago, actually, and so like I have no criminal record or anything like that. Like literally didn't do anything. It's actually kind of funny. I picked, this book, The Trial, out of my reading list, like any number of books that I had on my list that I wanted to read. I basically chose it because I did have, this court date coming up, and I thought, wouldn't it be funny to read, The Trial, like my trial. So I did. The only way I can describe it is that it was Kafkaesque. Like, it did not make any sense. So it was an assault charge, if you have to know. Um, not guilty, obviously. So it got thrown out. I mean, there's no evidence because, hey, I didn't do anything. But it was so weird. Like the whole thing was kind of happening around me this whole time. Like it lasted for like an entire year, and nothing made a whole lot of sense. This sort of legal apparatus like operating around me it never was really explained to me all that well, and I never saw most of what was happening. I just sort of informed that things were going on, and it was very Kafkaesque. It was super weird. And I mean, like obviously they dropped everything because there was no evidence because I didn't do anything. The whole thing actually was started by like the investigating officer who was like harassing me the whole time. But anyways, before I protest too much, the trial by Kafka is okay. Plenty of people absolutely loved it. I'm sort of indifferent. Maybe it was just a little too close to home for me. I can't really recommend it. Either having a trial for like yourself or reading the trial. Both of those are kind of underwhelming experiences. But yeah, let's just move on like I'm trying to do. So as I've said, I've been absolutely binging Dan Kennedy books recently. This one is half decent. It's not like nothing phenomenal, but again, it's one of those books that it's so fantastically useful to like. Maybe it's not like a gripping reading experience, but it will like definitely make you a ton of money if you apply it to your actual business. So the idea is that if you run a business, one of the things you should focus on is internal marketing, which is basically marketing to the customers you already have and keeping them as opposed to trying to always get new customers because the cost to acquire new customers is a lot higher than just serving the customers you already have, making the customers you already have even happier and like selling to them more times. And it's much easier to get someone to pay you again than it is to find other people who haven't paid you yet and convince them to pay you that first time. So retention is massively undervalued in business. And like imagine if you kept every single customer that you've ever had. Imagine that if once somebody bought from you that they never left you ever again. They always bought from you. And like if you never lost customers, how strong, how profitable would your business be after all this time? Like pretty damn profitable. And so that's the idea here. So the way he kind of breaks it down is that like unhappy customers will tell everybody, but like satisfied customers will kind of they'll buy from you maybe once, they might be back, maybe not, they're not going to like go out of their way to mention you to their friends. And then like you really happy customers will be, they'll maybe leave a positive review, maybe tell a couple people, but it's those evangelical customers that absolutely love what you do, what you're about, and like the people who you've treated exceptionally well, and they just keep coming back again and again. Those are the people who tell like 50 people about your business, and like those are the people you basically want as many people like in that category as you can, like as many people who love your business as you possibly can. So that's what this book will help you to do. And it's like I said, it's not like gripping reading material. It's not going to keep you up at night with anticipation. But if you run a business, it's exceptionally worthwhile. And speaking of making money in your business, join my private business mastermind. It's called the Competitive Advantage, and it's basically where I help entrepreneurs add an extra $5,000 per month or more to their monthly recurring revenue. It's such a fantastic group of people I have in there right now, and I can't take credit for all of their success, or even most of it. But having a group of people so completely on your side is just so incredibly powerful in business. And it's like they say, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, you go together. So that's the first link in the description. It's called the Competitive Advantage. And what I'm doing now is I buy a book for every new member of the group every single month. And it doesn't have to be nonfiction business type book. It could be literally anything. So once you join the group, I will send you a welcome message, kind of, welcome you to the group, and I will ask you which book you want me to buy for you that month, and I will ship it out to you. And so, yeah, first link in the description, called the Competitive Advantage. I also have a new podcast episode with Eric Jorgensen coming out very, very soon. And he's the author of The Almanac of Naval Ravikant, one of my favorite books of all time. And he just wrote another one called The Anthology of Biology, which is just a phenomenal book as well. And so that podcast is coming up. But in this video right here, I talk about one of the absolute best books that I've read so far in 2024 and how you have no choice but to succeed. But that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
Waste time, no, I make time. All these people wanna hate, fine, I'ma make mine. While you sitting there complaining, I'll be training. While you sitting there just waiting, I'm creating. Yeah, sometimes I think that I'm unstoppable.